Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Art of Being a Woman. I'm your host, Courtney, and this week's episode is The Art of Silencing Your Inner Critic. I wanted to dive into this topic this week because we all have an inner critic, and if we don't call it out and check it, it can really start to distort the way that we view ourselves and the way that we feel about ourselves, which we don't want at all. We want to make sure that our inner dialogue is as positive as can be, and we are being as kind as we can possibly be to ourselves. So we are going to discuss 4 steps, as always, that I covered on my Instagram account and on Threads at She Is Artfully Woman. And we're going to break down how to really silence our inner critic for good. I have sort of addressed this topic quite a few times in different episodes in season 1, specifically in the ego series, because our inner critic is our ego, which is something that many of us are not aware of. I know that I was not aware of that until last year, but when we realize that our inner critic isn't our true self, it's not our true nature, it makes it a little bit easier for us to detach ourselves emotionally from what it's telling us. I think it's really important that each and every one of us really works on silencing our inner critic every single day, because when we don't, and the thoughts that are surfacing in our mind are more negative than positive, it's more likely that we're going to absorb the negativity. And when we don't feel good about ourselves, it's going to be harder to be kind to ourselves, of course, but also make choices in our life that are kind towards ourselves, as well as influencing how we treat other people. The 4 steps that we're going to get into are the following. Step 1, separate yourself from the inner critic. Step 2, recognize the critic isn't helping you. Step 3, reclaim control over your thoughts. And step 4, redirect your energy into new beliefs. Let's get straight into step 1, separate yourself from the inner critic. In order for us to really be able to silence our inner critic, we have to be able to observe our thoughts as they come and go in our mind. I like to think of thoughts in my mind as cars coming and going. Sometimes there's many cars coming and going at the same time, and there's like mental traffic, and that's just when I'm overwhelmed. I'm thinking about a lot of things at once. I'm thinking about what I have to do. I'm thinking about how I feel about the things I have to do. I'm thinking about the future. Maybe I'm reflecting on the past, and it's pretty intense. It's a lot going on at once. But then there's also moments where there's not many thoughts coming and going. I'm pretty relaxed. I could be reading a book. I could be meditating, going for a walk, and it's easier for me to focus on one specific thought. I believe we all experience that fluctuation of having a lot of thoughts at once to feeling more mentally relaxed. Some of us are highly aware of all the thoughts that are coming and going in our mind, and some of us are not. We don't really like to focus on the thoughts that come and go too much. But in order for us to really separate ourselves from the inner critic, we do have to start paying attention to what's going on, even if the thought seems insignificant. Because our mind is like our home. It's our mental home. And if we were to never check on it, never do a deep clean or just a little tidy up and look around to what's going on, things can get messy, chaotic, and what we're thinking and feeling goes unchecked. In order to silence your inner critic, you have to be able to separate yourself from your thoughts. And how do we do this? We do this by just observing them. And I feel like people say that a lot, observe your thoughts. But how exactly do you do that? That's a great question that I myself had not too long ago. If you are just starting out observing your thoughts, I recommend meditation. And if you have never meditated, or you have, but you don't do it regularly, I get why you don't do it, and I get why it's hard to be consistent with it, because that's how I was when I first started. But meditation is truly a mental sweep of your mind. And if we were to really be honest with ourselves, we have so many thoughts coming and going on a daily basis. Some are good thoughts, some are not so good thoughts, some are fear-based, we have anxiety about the future. Some are negative because we feel regret or we feel embarrassed about something about our past. And sometimes it's just neutral. We're just going through the motions of our day. Regardless, if we don't do that daily sweep mentally, what happens is our mind gets cluttered and we get overwhelmed mentally, which leads to a few things. Honestly, it leads to us mentally checking out a lot. One clear example of mentally checking out is when we space out throughout the day. That means that we're mentally overwhelmed. Another clear example of being mentally checked out is that we're scrolling on social media and time is flying by and we don't even know how we were on social media for so long. I have definitely done that, and I definitely check out throughout my day from time to time. But I have noticed that when I do make it my business to meditate on a daily basis, this happens less and less. I am able to mentally check back in much quicker and regain control of where my thoughts are going and where my attention is going. Truly, that is one major reason why meditation is so important, and I highly, highly recommend and advise that each and every one of you meditate at least once a day. Me personally, I meditate for honestly maybe a minute or two. And that sounds crazy, I think, to those that meditate longer, because can you really do much of a clean or a sweep in 1 minute? I don't know, honestly. I'm sure that if you meditate for 10 minutes a day, it's way better than meditating for 1 to 2 minutes a day. But I like to start off very small and then gradually build on a new habit so that I'm not discouraged from the beginning. I feel like sometimes when we set a goal for ourselves and it's really big, it can be very hard to commit to. So that's what I personally do. I meditate throughout my day, actually, for just 1 minute at a time. And all I do is focus on my breath. I'll inhale through my nose for 3 to 4 seconds, and then I'll exhale from my mouth for 3 to 4 seconds. And I usually repeat that at least 3 times back to back consistently. I do this when I wake up in the morning before I even get out of bed. I do this whenever I feel like I am getting a little mentally overwhelmed. I do this whenever I notice that I'm mentally spacing out, and I do this before I go to bed. That might sound like a lot, but it works for me, and it's really soothing and really relaxing. It's like a reset button in my mind. So you could try out my method and do it 1 minute throughout your day and break it up, or perhaps commit to doing it in the morning or the evening, whenever you feel like you would need it most. And I promise you will notice that as you start to meditate, it'll be easier for you to observe your thoughts better as they come and go. And you'll notice when there's just a lot of chatter, and you'll notice when you're pretty at peace and there's not much going on. Another benefit to meditating is that when you are in your meditation, you will notice that you are trying to take a break from thinking, and thoughts are still going to come and go. Whether your thoughts are going to pull you to what you have to do after your meditation is over, or perhaps your thoughts are telling you that meditation is stupid, whatever it may be, you are going to notice that you are physically making a decision. You're trying to do something, but your mind has its own agenda. It's trying to influence your behavior and your feelings. This is very important because this shows us that we're not really the ones creating these thoughts. Because if we made a decision to do something, but then there's a voice in our head telling us not to do it, how does that really make sense? How is that truly coming from us and what we truly desire deep down, if it's conflicting our desires deep down? Whenever we are observing our thoughts, whether we're in meditation or we're not, and we notice that a thought is crossing our mind and it's going against something that we really want, even if it's hard for us to accomplish, it's really important in those moments that we call it out mentally. And that can sound weird. Like, are we having a whole conversation with ourselves in our head? Yeah, kind of. That's what it's going to feel like in the beginning. But it's necessary, at least in the beginning, because you need to establish in your mind that not every thought that you think is something that you agree with. And we all have thoughts that come and go that we don't agree with. I know that there was this meme many years ago. It was like a Kermit the Frog meme, and it was a bit dark. Let me search it up so I don't actually sound insane. Yes, okay. So it's the Kermit the Frog meme where basically it's Kermit the Frog talking to himself, but one version of himself has a dark hoodie on. So it's like the shadow side of Kermit the Frog. And it says me holding a baby. It's so cute. Oh my God. And then it says also me, throw it, which is very dark, obviously. But it's something that does happen. Sometimes we can be just living our life, minding our business, and this weird, negative, dark, intrusive thought pops into our mind and gives us this weird idea to do something that we know we obviously don't want to do. When we're holding a baby, we know that we don't want to throw the baby, but it's just so weird that such a thought would surface when we don't agree with it at all. Obviously, when we have such an extreme negative thought like that, it's very easy for us to be like, okay, I'm not doing that, and that's crazy. But that voice isn't always that extreme. It's just negative in general. It just always opposes whatever it is that you truly want to do, which sounds really toxic, but it's to challenge you mentally. This shadow side of ourselves and this negative voice in our head, it's not us at all. It's our ego. And I have a whole series that really breaks down the ego, probably a lot better than I could do it right now, because I'm finding it hard to find the words to discuss the ego in a very quick, concise way. But ultimately, the ego is like the devil on our shoulder. A lot of cartoons show the devil and the angel, and when we are met with decisions in our life and we're going through some sort of internal conflict, there's our higher self that tells us to do what's right, even if it's hard and it's scary and it makes us uncomfortable. And then there's the side of us that says, who cares? Just do what's easy and do what's going to benefit you the most, regardless of how it affects other people, so on and so forth. That's the devil on our shoulder. That's the ego. But the thing is about the devil on our shoulder, it's never the one that has to suffer the consequences of the decisions that we make. It's us that has to deal with the consequences of siding with it and doing something more egotistical. So the more that we do these daily meditations and these daily mental check-ins with our thoughts, and we start categorizing our thoughts, higher self, ego self, the easier it'll be for us to catch when the inner critic is trying to manipulate us mentally and distort the way that we think about ourselves and view ourselves. Number 2, recognize the critic isn't helping you. This can sound like a given because obviously if you have a voice in your head that's being highly critical, that's obviously not positive, but sometimes we're like a glutton for punishment. Sometimes we enjoy that tough love. Perhaps it's because we grew up with tough love, and so we believe that that is real love. But I feel like people throw around the term tough love, but they throw a lot of mistreatment into it. Someone putting you down and then saying it's because they care about you and they want the best for you, that's not tough love. Tough love is holding people accountable for their actions, but that doesn't mean that you're insulting someone or picking someone apart in the process. That's just insecurity. That's just mean, and that's just negativity. So if you are someone that is in a relationship with someone, whether it's a friend, romantic partner, or family member, and they're a tough love kind of person, but their tough love is kind of bordering on disrespect and criticism, it's time to really get very honest with yourself about that relationship and establish some boundaries, which I discuss in a different episode in season 2. You should check it out. But back to this step. Sometimes it's not necessarily that we're comfortable or used to other people criticizing us. Perhaps we have boundaries with that and we do not let anybody disrespect us or criticize us if it's not really coming from a place of holding us accountable. Perhaps it's us. Perhaps we're the mean ones to ourselves. Perhaps we're the bully. Perhaps we are the ones tearing ourselves apart internally. We look in the mirror, we think about all the things that we need to fix about ourselves. We think about our personality and how we need to be more interesting and more cool. You name it. We all have our own insecurities, and our inner critic can sound a little bit different to each and every one of us, but ultimately, it's just mean and a bully. But the tricky part about the inner critic is that it's not going to be an obvious bully. It's going to tell you that it's being mean to you because it wants you to be your best self. Doesn't that sound so amazing? If you tolerate all the negativity that it tells you, it's promising you that you will become a better version of yourself, and then you'll be happier. You'll like yourself more, and the voice will stop being mean and it will stop bullying you. But as we know, that's not how it works. There's always something else that a bully finds to pick on. You're never going to win by giving in to the bully and negotiating with it. You have to truly starve it of your attention, because think about it. What do bullies really feed off of? Attention. That's really what they want. Always. And the same thing goes for our inner critic. What does it want? It wants attention. If we want to silence our inner critic, we have to be so serious about ignoring it. And that looks like a negative thought crosses your mind. Let's say when you look in the mirror, or you're scrolling on social media and you see someone and they look amazing, they look beautiful, or they're on vacation, and these are things that you want for yourself, and you just feel a lot of lack and you don't feel good enough. Your inner critic can say something like, oh, if only I looked like her, then I would be able to do what she's doing. When you get a thought like that, you need to really clock yourself mentally and tell yourself, I don't agree. That's what I recommend. In the beginning, you really need to set a boundary. The same way that if someone were to say that to your face and tell you, oh, yeah, you'll never be successful or gorgeous like so-and-so because you are lazy, let's say, then you would call them out. So you need to call out the inner critic in your head as well, because who do you really think you're talking to? Truly, ultimately, the goal is to not react to these negative thoughts, because again, reacting is still giving it attention. But I feel like it's very hard to just observe a negative thought when you're still entangled with them and you still believe that they're true. So make sure that you're aware that just because a thought crosses your mind doesn't mean it's true. And once you get to that point, try your best to ignore these thoughts. Don't be upset that they cross your mind, because they will cross your mind. They always do. Your job is to just ignore it, reject it, because that's where your power lies. And the more that you starve the inner critic of your attention, the less powerful it will be, and the stronger your real thoughts and your real voice is going to be, to the point where it's going to be so obvious to you when a thought is testing your confidence and your self-esteem. Before we move on to step 3, I just want to make sure that everyone knows this. The most successful people in the world have an inner critic. We all have an inner critic. The only thing that separates those that, I guess, are successful, and it's not necessarily the case all the time, but you go after what it is that you want, regardless of what the inner critic is saying. You don't let a thought hold you back. You don't let fear hold you back. You don't let self-doubt hold you back. I'm not saying that you should never feel fear and that you should never feel doubt. Of course, you're going to feel both of those things. It's a part of life and it's something that we all feel, but you need to be able to push through it and not be intimidated by it. Don't let it convince you to stay small. Don't let it manipulate you into not doing the things that you really want to do. This is reminding me of a book that I read. It's called The War of Art, and it was recommended by someone on Instagram many years ago. I don't even remember how that book even came across my timeline, but I bought it and I didn't read it for so long. I only read it a year ago, and wow, that book is so amazing. If you really want a quick, great read on the inner critic, it's a great book for that. But basically the author, let me get his name, give him his flowers. The author is Steven Pressfield, and I believe he has an Instagram account, and I follow him as well. He's great. I definitely recommend you follow him if you're not. He basically explains that for all artists, and this is all different types of creatives, writers, movie producers, actors, actresses, singers, you name it. When you start to create and you start to go after something that excites you, there's going to be this resistance. There's going to be this force that is going to try to hold you back from doing what it is that you really want to do. And it's very important that you push right back against the resistance and you push through. And he goes into so many other components into that whole process of experiencing that resistance, but ultimately he explains that it never really goes away. And honestly, the further you make it, the more you push through, it's almost like the resistance grows to your level of mental strength. And I'm not sharing that with you to discourage you, and neither is the author, but it's to prepare you and to let you know that you're not alone in this sort of mental battle that you're going through between going after what it is that you want and feeling like you can't achieve it. It reminds you that there's people that experience the same exact things as you, and because they didn't give up, they ended up achieving everything that they set their mind to. All you have to do is push past that resistance, and you will be successful in whatever it is that you set your mind to. Life is truly a mental game. If you can take action despite feeling doubt and fear, you will win at anything you set your mind to. You just have to be consistent with it. I definitely got a little off topic with this step, but I'm happy that I did because it all connects, and that's important to know. So just to quickly summarize the most important parts of step 2, don't allow your inner critic to bully you into improvement. It's not going to last, it's not going to stick, and it's not tough love. It's just mean and it's bullying. Second, understand that the inner critic is always going to exist, especially when you are mentally becoming stronger. You just need to keep your eye on the prize, so to speak. Focus on your goal, focus on what it is that you want, and ignore everything else. Ignore the doubt, ignore the fear, because as we mentioned in step 1, giving it too much attention gives it more power over you, gives it more energy and influence. Step 3, reclaim control over your thoughts. We definitely explained this throughout the episode so far, but I'll just sharpen the idea a little bit more. In order to reclaim our control over our thoughts, first we need to accept that we're not fully in control of all the thoughts that come and go, because some thoughts are coming from our ego, this opposite force that is meant to challenge us. Once we establish that and we accept that, we really want to be a security officer in our mind, checking who's coming in and who's going out. If you're a good thought, you can stay. If you're a negative thought, don't give it any attention whatsoever. Or, like I mentioned earlier, if that's hard, you check that thought mentally and you can call it out. Something that me and my friend did when we were studying for our boards exam was we gave our ego, our inner critic, a name, and we wanted it to be a funny name, but also like a mean name, so that we can remember that this inner critic is really a bully and they're not our friend, and we don't want to listen to anything that it says. So the name that we gave our inner critic was Big Back Bertha, and that was so funny to the both of us. So anytime we were feeling self-doubt regarding our exam and we didn't feel like we studied hard enough, we would really call it out together. We would tell each other, like, that's Big Back Bertha talking. You got to put her in her place. Who does she think she is talking to like that? And it would just make us laugh, but it would also take the attention away from the negativity. And instead, we put all our attention on laughing at the inner critic and not allowing it to be as serious as it wanted to be. So if you are just starting out, I recommend you try that. It really did help. And honestly, me and my friend, we passed our boards exam on our first try, which is very rare. And obviously, I can't say 100% it's because we worked on our self-doubt and we pushed past it, but I really do think it was a big factor. We really worked on our mindset while studying, and it kept us focused and our attention sharp. Instead of us focusing and worrying about not knowing enough information and not being prepared enough and messing up on a question on the exam, we really retrained our mind to focus on what it is that we really desired and what mattered to us most. And we were successful. So give your inner critic a nasty name, make it funny, make it fun, ultimately, and start calling that bitch out. I don't usually curse on this podcast, but the inner critic is a bitch, okay? And you need to do what you got to do, say what you need to say to yourself in your head to make sure that she stays in line. My inner critic is a she, so she has to stay in line. Step 4, redirect your energy into new beliefs. This step is like the cherry on top. This is for when you get to that point where you're aware of your thoughts, you're calling out your inner critic in real time, and you're getting pretty good at it. Now it's time to add on another layer. Instead of just calling out your negative thought and moving on, you need to add a new thought of your own. And what that new thought should be is something that you actually want, something that you desire to experience in your life. So, for example, I'll go back to that time in my life where I was studying for my boards exam. This is truly when I became highly aware of the inner critic, because I didn't understand why I was studying more than I ever have in my whole entire life, and the doubt that was surfacing was so strong. It was so strong, and I didn't want to agree with the thoughts. I didn't want to agree with the fact that I would fail, and I didn't want to agree with the fact that I wasn't studying hard enough, because I was studying hard enough, and I did not want to fail and have to retake it. And I didn't like that the closer I was getting to the exam, the louder these thoughts were getting. So what I did was I challenged myself, and I told myself, every single time a negative thought pops in my mind, I'm going to say the opposite of what it's telling me. So if I got a negative thought and it was telling me that I might not pass the exam on my first try, then I would quickly say out loud, and yeah, that sounds crazy because I would be saying it out loud. I would just declare, I am so happy that I passed my test on my first try with flying colors. I said it so much that I was like a broken record. I would say it before bed. I would say it when I woke up in the morning. I would say it throughout my day, but I would especially say it when my inner critic was getting loud. And by me saying this, it didn't make my inner critic shut up completely, but the fact that I was putting so much energy into what I wanted versus what the inner critic wanted me to believe, my belief became just as strong as my inner critic. And luckily, thank God, it wasn't luck, it was God, I ended up passing my exam on my first try with flying colors, exactly as I said I would. So do this with whatever it is that your inner critic tells you as often as possible. If you are trying to apply for a new job and you're noticing that self-doubt is creeping in, your inner critic is getting loud, telling you that they might not pick you for the job, there's other people more qualified, you need to really tell that voice to shut up. In your head, obviously, you don't have to start yelling in the street, but after you really clock that negative thought, replace it with a better thought. Tell yourself, I'm so grateful that I got this great new job. I am so grateful that this new job loves my resume and they hired me, whatever it may be, and commit to it. You can't just say it once, you can't just think it once, because think about how often your inner critic is running around in the background trying to get you to doubt yourself. You have to really compete with this voice, compete with this resistance, and you will see that you will come out on top. Obviously, in situations like the example that I gave, you're applying to a job. Sometimes the job is just not meant for you. So you can be working on your inner critic and you can be focusing on having more positive thoughts, and things can still not work out. But I just want to remind you of two things in those situations. One, nothing that's meant for you can ever miss you. So if you really wanted something and it didn't happen, that's because that wasn't the best possible outcome for you, for your soul, for your journey in life. And number two, you still gained something tremendous. You've become strong mentally, and that is invaluable. That is something that you need for the rest of your life, because every single time you go after something new, that inner critic is going to test you again. So it's a win-win, regardless if you get your way or not. And I talk about that more in last week's episode, The Art of Detaching from Outcomes. So if you are looking for more of a deeper dive into how to deal with situations like that in life, where you do feel like a specific path is perfect for you, but it didn't work out and you're wrestling with accepting that, I definitely recommend you listen to that episode. We go more in depth in those types of circumstances. But if not, I hope that this episode provided you with some tools and some tips so that from this moment forward, you're no longer intimidated by fear. You're no longer intimidated by self-doubt, and you're no longer intimidated by anything that your inner critic throws your way, because ultimately you know that the power is in your hands. You decide if you give attention to your inner critic. You decide if you agree with what it's saying or not, and you decide which thoughts you would rather pay more attention to so that they're more likely to manifest and come true. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate this podcast. It means so much to me. And if you aren't yet following, please do, so that you can get updated every single time I put out a new episode, which is on Tuesdays every week. If you are looking for more of my daily content, you can catch me on Threads at She Is Artfully Woman. Before I sign off, I just want to say that if you made it to the end of this episode, I already know that your life is going to truly change for the better. Because when you start working on silencing your inner critic, you become unstoppable. Nothing gets in your way because you don't get in your way anymore. So I'm excited for you, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this week's topic. I hope you have an amazing week. I love you guys so much. Until next episode, bye for now.